I start playing this?
From beginning on all that.
There you go. All right. First of all, we have our character. That is what everybody is aware of today. From there, we ended up, for GI to run, you need this GI server component, and then you have the GI client. That GI client is specific to Windows. It will only run on a Windows platform. And at this point, when 6.1 came along, we did away with the toolkit requirements, where it used to have a toolkit in order to get the message sends and all those things so that it would interface. We've dissolved it because we figure it's going to be within the annual stuff. You guys are fine with it at this point. Let's just give it to them so they can use all the tools that are available. So now you can send all the messages and everything else, which there's a ton of message sends, which we'll go over later on here.
I have to tell you something. On my screen reader, when it hits one of those sends, you have to hit a tab to get to the next one. There are 267 on it.
Wow.
I couldn't jump to the bottom and do anything with things. I knew there was something where it was just the same one every time. It was saying tab, send, and everything. Something wrong. Jim told me there were 267 on the page or something like that. So.
Now, to be clear, the GI server can be Unix or Windows.
Yeah.
It's just the client is.
Right, the client only, yeah. The Unix, or the GI server, so filePro can be Unix or Windows or BSD, Linux, SCO.
Actually, I'm talking about the fileProWeb version. On the web page, there's a bunch of sends and receives and messages, one after another, news of the day or news of the whatever. And it's just what you're talking about, but I
Yeah.
haven't stopped on it. You don't have to anyone for that.
So then there's this layer GI server. That GI server is the mechanism for web and GI in order to do all of its messaging. It's unique, proprietary type of a messaging thing that you have to communicate through. That's what Tim's like saying, oh, thank you, Logan, for speeding up. That part there, this GI server component, is the part that went from Java to C. It runs on the Linux or the Unix or the Windows or whatever platform we support. It runs on that server. That then communicates to the client, which is down here. It runs on a PC, the GI client. Now, this here says that if you want, you need some way to share that device, whether or not you have another a web option in order to view the image or whatever, in order to point to stuff that you would generate in filePro to pop to the client, you need some kind of a way to present it. That's optional, but nevertheless, when it comes to the GI client, you are capable of running programs as long as the extension exists in Windows. It will use the default extension in order to launch that application using the run option, which is very powerful. We do not have that part in web.
For those, you want me to give a little on with the GI, let me just say this. For those of you that haven't used the GI, as it came up earlier in the day, there's the data, your key and your data records are not traveling the network. It's like a terminal emulator. It's sending clicks back, keystrokes back to the service. It's sending screen data back. The message send is used for some more advanced things, but for most of what you do, it's sort of like Unix. GI server will launch your R clerks. So you go into the task manager or your process list on the server, and you will see all the R clerks for everybody who's running a GI session. The only thing that's running on the PC is the GI client. So all of that business of having to open the file and copy the map and the screens and the processing tables down, when you're in mapped drive mode, like on the left, character mode or text mode, all of that has to travel the network over SMB, which has the other issues I'll talk about later, in order to run it. So all this network traffic is going on. And if you unplug your network, you might get data corruption. The GI server, everything runs on the server. It's just the display that's running on the client. And if you want to display, like fire off something locally, like Adobe or whatever, then you, much the way the terminal emulators, we used to do the escape left bracket to right bracket to fire off through the terminal emulator to run something locally. That's what a message send does. It lets you send commands to the client from the server to do local stuff on it. And that's how we've been doing it, but it's been slow. It doesn't keep up with the keystrokes. So my power data entry people refuse to use it. Now with version 6, it's the same speed as text. They don't know they're not on the server, and yet all of my ARC clerks and everything else need a little more beef on the server because there's more processes there, but I need less on the PCs, ironically.
But as he mentioned though, there's a new frame of mind to think of if you're a DOS developer, because when you execute things, it's executing on that Windows server. It's no longer executing from the client's PC side. So it acts more like a Unix server in that in that realm. So when you launch it, everything's running on that single Windows server as far as your filePro. So when you print, that printer has to be known by the server, because that's the side it's printing from. It's not printing from the client that you're typically used to. So it is a new mindset for those of you who are using Windows.
If you did system notepad, it's going to launch a notepad on the server that the client can't see, because they're on the client, they're on the PC, and you could do a message send to launch notepad on the client, but if you do a system command notepad, you just send it off into Neverland because that's on the server. And all the hard drives and disk pointers, of course, are local. Your D drive, not your map drive. All your data files, everything stays on the server.
Yeah.
What is the purpose of the GI? I don't get it.
Number one, to make it mouse aware. And
Yeah.
number two, to make it look prettier.
It's graphical, it's got...
If we were doing this today, is there any advantage to using GI 6.0 versus fileProWeb? I mean, I'm still character-based.
The advantage would be, depending on how you want to use it, this GI has local OS level for that PC. When you're talking to the client, you can do things specific to the client right at this present time. For example, you can query a directory listing and ask the person in order to take and drill down to select a file, and it'll pass you back that directory that they selected so that you can take and do whatever you need to do. Or you can find out, is a request that Tim wanted, if a certain window is open by looking at its title, and then say, okay, now that it's open, say, hey, you first have to close this, or whatever you want to do. Those types of things we don't have in the web environment.
Will we? Down the road.
I don't know if you're going to get all of them.
One short answer to that, it makes it easier to sell to Windows people.
Yeah. We run in this little caviar of security versus, versus usability too, on some of that.
Chris, one of the advantages to the GUI running off the server, like on Unix, is you gain speed. I have a client that runs a report they have to run on Saturday on the server because they're accessing a file with 4,000 records, which accesses a database of 35 million records. And it's got to go through that. And the only way that we're not dragging everything across the network is to run it on the server. I tested it out on my system. It took 4 hours to run that report across the network. It takes under 2 hours to run it on the server. More beef on the server. Also with your clients, they can run a slower processor, just beef up their server, and they gain speed. Just keep the memory out there. If you want to know what the memory requirements are, look at Citrix website, and it'll tell you how much memory you need for each user, because this is going to be exactly the same way as Citrix is.
Yeah, that's good. When I said GI used to be slower, I'm talking about the keyboard, the typing. I would type stuff in and it might not keep up with me. I could type faster than the screen would refresh because it was having to loop through the network, and that's fixed without the Java. But it was the other big reason we did it, and thank you for clarifying, is a D report or an R report that you're running, where obviously the data's reading from the hard drive into the memory of the server and back again, versus being chunked in bytes into Ethernet packets and then transmitted via SMB over a network. that might not even be all gigabit, and even if it is gigabit speed, that's nowhere near the speed of direct attached storage on the server. So sending all the data to FilePro and back again is a big bottleneck, and frankly a security risk in today's times. You can get rid of your map drives for the most part and get better speed with GI. Obviously, web is new and not in production except for you guys. So
It's officially kind of, I think, being released right now. But
I'm surprised that you did not raise the advantage of using GUI for remote locations. It's far easier to use the filePro GUI when you have several locations.
oh yeah, right. If you're in a Windows box, this is
In Windows, yeah.
Yes, this is the, you're gonna gain a lot of speed.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, you have to deal with some of your code change as far as printing and where things are launching, but if you can get that under control, then yeah,
It prints locally very easily.
yeah, like, yeah, if you're wanting to do just normal printing, GI, we have PFPT equals
Yeah.
on. Unix world's had that for a long time, that does the pass-through printing. When it comes to Windows, and that variable still works in Windows, so if you have a Windows system and you want to print to the local one, set your PFPT equals on, you have your PFPRTC for your print code table type, and then it'll print locally with that print code table type. And it works in both Unix and Windows on that variable. Even though typically you don't think of pass-through printing in a Windows environment, it's been built that way in order to handle it.
But for remote locations, the filePro GUI works fine.
Oh yeah, it would work fine.
Oh, yeah.
back to the question about why not just do everything in web. Think of it this way. The graphical client is a thick client. You install it on PCs that you control. So you got the GI client talking to the server. The internet, what's the client? It's Internet Explorer, it's Chrome, it's something you have no control over whatsoever. The whole idea of the web is you don't have to control the client. More is being handled on the server. But, you know, if you go to eBay, does eBay's website have the ability to do anything on your PC or fire off local programs? No. There are tricks like for uploading images and some things, but websites inherently are not integrated. Yeah, they're not client server. They're server pushing out screens, and so there's some inherent limitations that it looks like you guys have found ways to extend and get around some of that. But there's just limits to what you can do in a where you can't control the browser on the other end. That's why message send doesn't exist in fileProWeb in that context, right?
Message send does exist. It just doesn't deal with certain functions because at this point we're trying to figure out how to get the security there, because when you start allowing people to use a browser, they automatically think that it's internet site. And if I start throwing everything on the internet site, you imagine if I'm launching other people's applications remotely,
Yeah.
that could be very risky.
That'll evolve.
Yeah, but that's been Logan and we're trying to be very security conscious when we do things. I can show you a whole bunch of things that we even do internally, but I would not necessarily grant it to the FilePro community just to say, hey, here's how you do it all, because of the security that the levels that are entailed in order to deal with outside your internal network. Anyways, next slide. This is where your browser falls into the place. We still have the fileProGI server, but as you notice, what's happened is the GI client moved to the fileProWeb web app part. You need that.
Can you make that any bigger, the writing?
Let me see.
Control plus,
I'm trying to see.
the boxes.
There you go, thank you.
Okay. So, but that fileProWeb is a new little component that actually takes the place of the client and allows so essentially it acts like the same as the client, but allows it to be viewed on the browser. So,
Okay, so you need all three.
as far as yeah, but they all come in as a kit, but all three are working in harmony.
Okay.
And so in other words, when you get web, you don't have to buy like It's not like you're having to get everything else. It's like
Oh,
you're getting
okay.
everything together.
Okay.
And GI is included in web. If you get web, you're getting GI.
And Tomcat's included in web.
Yeah, well, it's using Tomcat. Our installer puts the Tomcat on, so you don't have to worry about
For
it.
Windows and Unix?
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't worry about you guys having to deal with Tomcat.
So you could have an implementation that was both GI and web?
Correct. And we don't, if you got the web and you're staying, or if you're on subscription and you stay on subscription, you can use both interfaces and you can use them interchangeably. Like I want to use web this time, but I want to use client now. You can do, and you can even do text at the same time, as long as your counts are there. And we've even taken it a step further with the accounts, which all this stuff will go through, is that when I'm configuring the account, I can say, well, for web, I want the printer to be this one. For GI, I want the printer to be this one, because obviously they can be in different places. So we have some conditionals that we've added in 6.0.
And in process.
And in process. So, yeah. So, though it's not required, Apache could be used in order to access files in the event that you want to have your servers separately. Now, what I mean by that is fileProWeb does not have to reside on the same data or same server as the application server is.
Good.
However, that's precedent, that if you generate something in filePro, it's only on the filePro application server, so therefore you have to deal with getting it over to the web client if you want to take and be able to display it. But it does not have to be on there. It's a port of communications. So you can have, it has a barrier there. So,
So at the bottom, it's just a browser.
yeah, those are the part I have in tan, those are options. You don't have to have that.
I'm below that.
Oh,
We're zoomed in.
yeah, filePro web browser.
What browser?
We primarily tested in Chrome, however, people have used Firefox and IE as well. Really, at this point, if you guys inform us that you found something in a particular browser, we're still fixing, other browsers, but as the world is, it seems like Microsoft's moved into Chromium as well, so it seems to be the primary browser that's going to win at the moment.
I tested on 7 browsers. One was just like a free nothing, that it was really streamlined and it still worked. So I don't think anybody
Yeah.
had a problem.
And the beauty is, and this is really a beauty, you can run this without changing a bit of your code if you don't care that it is, except for the fact of being able to type and just go into it. When you get the URL in, if you didn't change a bit of your code, for the most part, I can't say 100%, it'll work right out the door. You will want to change it though in order to, but you don't have to. So.
Could you show that?
I was gonna say, yeah.
We will do that. That was what the whole of tomorrow was supposed to be, but it looks like we're rescheduling this thing. Pat was going to show you that whole thing, but ours. So the other FilePro programs are FPSQL and FP Transfer. We're looking at FP Transfer, maybe reworking that here in the next bit.
One question, you used to have a transfer from Windows to Unix.
That's what FP Transfer is.
Well, yeah, but the problem, you used to have one that was X for DOS.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, no, okay. Mainline?
I mean, the problem I have with trying to do that is typically I have 100 databases and you can only do one at a time from DOS.
Well,
No.
that you could, if you ask Ernie or somebody in support, they can give you a script, but you could do a for loop and be able to just go through
okay.
your whole thing and then produce those as images or your individuals, and then on the other side extract them likewise with a for loop, and so you wouldn't have to.
Okay.
I'm not saying it wouldn't be a future enhancement, but I'm saying today, if you really
No,
had to do it,
that's
you could
fine,
do
'cause I
it.
have two big ones to do, and it's like,
Yeah.
one at a time to cut it.
But I believe I have that loop on my PC if you need it
Okay.
afterwards to know what it looks like. I
Okay,
can show you.
thank you.
Does, in 6, does FP SQL handle blobs?
FPSQL has not been updated. Or are you talking about the new mirroring?
No way.
The ODBC mirror or just the?
No, just FPSQL.
We have not updated FPSQL.
Are you taking still like suggestions for it?
Oh, yes, of
Even
course.
shitty ones?
Yes, yeah, we have a wish list online, you can go on to the support portal and enter a request there, or just talk to one of us or send us an email.
When will it be completed?
What's that?
When will it be, FPSQL be completed?
Well, FPSQL does exist, it's just a product language. But
Yes.
it has some limitations, is what he was expressing in the limitations of like blobs. It does exist today, and that's not SQL, as you know, it's filePro's implementation of SQL. It's been around for years. Yeah, it's a separate product that you can.
It's a way to query filePro data if you know that kind of language. And it does allow you, in the latest version, to query from more than one filePro table at a time, which is nice. You can do a join and pull the data. That was the most recent major addition. But usually what you're going to do with it is you're going to dump it into you're going to use it as an export, as a way to suck data out of filePro into something else, which of course ODBC mirroring makes completely unnecessary if you don't mind people having the entire field available. But for people that know simple commands to query it and don't want to do low-level code, filePro low-level SQL connections, it can be used as a query tool, but not on blobs. I
Okay,
don't know how that would work anyway.
so,
You would want to
I don't know if I can enlarge too much. I'm gonna stand up and explain it a bit though. This is essentially where we were talking about PDFs. I'm gonna try to, you have your command in at the top, which is what you've seen in the configuration table. But this is how this is how it works. You have the database server, you have GI server. If you're using the web, it talks to the Tomcat server, which is actually fileProWeb, which then comes down here. You request it through the fileProWeb HTML interface, and then that comes back up to the database, which then generates the PDF document, which I drop to a folder. And if you want to, the new NW is for webs, to launch in a new window, the browser. So it launches in the new window, that command, and which it displays. Now, this here is working more when I'm showing this. This is more for like a two-system box, because SEO, for example, there's still some of you guys out there that have SEO. They, for a while, have not updated, and one of the limitations is they don't have Java 1.8. That is a requirement. And as such, we can't run the web directly. So, but you can run GI server because it's written in C. And we worked around that. But as far as the web component itself, it can't run. So therefore, you have to use a separate server in order to do it. So this is referring to a separate server if I'm having fileProWeb over here.
The GI server.
The GI server, I still have it sitting on my main database box. Right? And so it's communicating it database through GI server to the Tomcat server for your display. This is your external page then when you're seeing it, your filePro web page.
But they could be on the same server.
They could be, but I'm talking if you're having a separate, this is for a separate environment. For example, the Scout world, they have to be separate because they can't reside. So then the request from the external page sends it here, which the database generated the PDF and then stuck it down here. And then the output then comes down at the bottom to be displayed again to the client, to the main page, because it would be a separate page or a new window.
So is this saying that the GI server is basically the connective tissue between your web server and filePro?
It is. GI server,
Or a local client.
yeah, it doesn't, well, GI server still would have to, yeah. It's used in order to take and communicate.
What's the Tomcat doing? Is that like an Apache operating?
It's kind of like Apache. Tomcat's just another way to, it's Java based on your, and JavaScript for your web page stuff. You do not put it on each server. You just put it, that is fileProWeb. You put it on one server, and then all the PCs are pointing to that application server, much like an Apache server would be. You point to the URL of that Tomcat box.
Can the Tomcat coexist with IIS on a Windows server?
I see no reason why it would not.
They should. Unless you have something that also uses it, but you can configure it to use a different port.
Yeah, I was gonna say, obviously, ports it out.
Yeah, we allow you to use any port you want. By default, we use 8080 because it's Tomcats, but it could be any port that you want. All right. Out of that. Okay. Is it lunchtime? Okay.